Nordica. Hola, Nordica. I say hello. Hi, from Nordica. Sure, the coolest thing about this place, the old church. But shit, I would have been on that first Viking ship out of here to go conquer England, but I would have landed in Sicily. You know, when they took over Palermo and the island, I would have been one of those Vikings. You know, the Mediterranean. That's where my Viking blood belongs. Hola, from Norwegia. I think that's how you pronounce it in Norwegian. Lost in Lillehammer. Where is Lillehammer? It's about 2 hours north of Oslo. I have no cell service. I'm in a village of about 30,000 people. It's quite interesting, you know? The weather's a little different than Spain, where I was at recently, but this village has got lots of history and looked like something I definitely wanted to check out. And I haven't explored too much of Norway, just Oslo a few years back for like a day, but so far I'm liking it. It's cozy and the views, oh my goodness, the views are crazy. Check it out. Yeah, so I think for the most part the claim to fame for Lillehammer comes from the Olympics. They got amazing like skiing and winter type stuff happening here. Also, there was a TV show about some mafioso in America that got witness protection here, and it was based in Lillehammer. But I can see why they sent them here. It's just a nice, quaint, cozy, small village near the northern part of the biggest lake in Norway, like Moja. I have no idea, I cannot pronounce it, but it would be a good way to hide out for a while. I guess there's some little truth to that mafioso in Lillehammer, because I think 1973 Mossad, that's Israel's intelligence agency, killed a Moroccan waiter here because they thought he was some terrorist from a Middle Eastern country. I think maybe the TV show was kind of based out that little situation. They had that dude, they thought he was hiding out here in this little village of Lillehammer. So I guess the main market area here has been around since at least 1300s. It was written about in some famous Norwegian saga, and I guess another part is that these two sons met up with some king before they went eastward in this village. Didn't know the exact details, but it's been around, this place. Starbucks of Scandinavia. Scandinavia is just an interesting world to me. I spent about a year in Copenhagen, and I got a good taste of what it's really like to be Scandinavian. It just fascinates me how a once so barbaric, you know, crazy type civilization can turn into what it is now, which is basically, you know, utopia. You know, no crime, free education, free school, free healthcare. You get paid if you don't work, and it's just wicked how they've like transcended their barbaric ways and created such a, you know, wonderful world. Besides the weather, of course. Yeah, something about just the Scandinavian way, it seems like otherworldly. Like there's not a care, not to worry, and I think that's obviously good, but I also think humans need to feel something. They need to feel alive. They need to see some sort of danger, or they start making up danger. They start bitching about little things. I notice that a lot in Denmark. If you put an American in that environment and give them all the social welfare and the good paying jobs and the quality of life, you know, they would be in heaven. But after a while, I think there comes a point where you start bitching about the littlest things, right? You need to find something to cry about, something to be, you know, worried about. I don't know, it's just this weird predicament, because in Denmark, you know, I started noticing You know, a lot of people would just get shit-faced drunk, or they'd be on antidepressants, or, you know, they would try to find themselves in unhealthy ways to kind of feel that spark of life. Because I think when you go through such a perfect routine, you know, you need the suffering or the unhappiness to feel the happiness, right? You can't just live on high mode all the time, or nothing would be high. I'll tell you what I do kind of miss though is the Scandinavian way of dating. I've noticed it here again, kind of walking the streets, and obviously I dress a little louder. You want to see my pants? And you know, Scandinavians are more minimalistic and don't want to show out, don't want to draw attention, never show wealth, that type of attitude. So when you obviously kind of stick out or don't look like the rest, and you get the attention. And the Scandinavian girls, they'll look you down, you know, head to toe with those eyes, meaning, you know, it's game on, let's go. And obviously in the Scandinavian culture, for the most part, sex isn't as taboo, and it happens very quick. So it's kind of good to feel that again, being over here, coming from you know, living in Poland for a while, and it's more traditional, 100%. And you got to be the one that approaches the woman, and you know, they'll play kind of little games and test you and so forth. So it's fun being back in Scandinavian on that part. Nature is a big part of the Norwegian way of life. I was watching Dating Without Borders, and one of the first dates I think Norwegian men and boys do or recommend is getting a cup of coffee and just walking through nature. I also think there's a word for, you know, spending a couple hours in nature per day. It is very important. Obviously, it's been in their blood for a long time. Norway is surrounded by, you know, the lakes and the forest and the mountains. And I really appreciate that, because the more that I've lived in Europe, the more that I appreciate the nature. I appreciate walking around and, you know, being one with the environment. So I think the Norwegians do a wonderful job of incorporating nature into their surrounding areas. And obviously, you know, their population isn't that big, and they have a shit ton of land, so it's more doable. But I think if you go to places that don't have that much nature, it kind of wears on you after a while. You definitely feel more tense and, you know, on edge. And I think the nature is obviously healing, rejuvenates a person, no question about it. Prices don't seem too crazy as I remember, you know, being in Copenhagen, maybe because the dollar is so powerful now. But I went to like a mini market, you know, nice clean one, lots of different choices. Yeah, I got like 2 salads, some bread, cheese, and water, and it maybe came to $15, which, you know, in Poland, that same thing I got would have cost me maybe, you know, $7. But I remember in Copenhagen, it was like way more expensive, it seemed like back then. And I know Norway as a whole is more expensive than the rest of Scandinavia. Going back to not necessarily feeling alive in Scandinavia, and also the dating, I think this is why a lot of African Americans find plenty of success and happiness in this country. I met a handful of dudes who want to live here or have stayed here and lived here because, you know, obviously coming from, let's say, the ghetto or the hood, you know, being put in this kind of society and having not a worry, not a stress, not a care would be pretty refreshing. But also, like I said before, I think Scandinavians are searching for something new, exciting, different. And, you know, the stereotype is a lot of black dudes have kind of more of a macho type personality. And obviously being exotic, because Scandinavia is, you know, 99% homogeneous, you know, the same type of people. You get your fair share of people that want to experiment or try, you know, different things. And it's like a white dude that wants to go to Latin America, get some big booty Latinas, you know what I mean? So I've met a lot of dudes that have had a wonderful time in Scandinavia, black dudes that, you know, this is where they want to be, this is paradise for them, and I can see why, 100%. You know, the stories I've heard, the things I've seen, it is quite, you know, crazy. Yeah, so my biggest gripes with Scandinavia is, of course, the cost of living. I don't like to, you know, pay $15 for an Aperol Spritz. I think that's a crime. Now, obviously, their salaries are high. They get a crap ton for the taxes they pay, so it kind of, you know, balances out. But that's not fun, you know. I want to go out to eat every day if I want to. I don't want to think, oh, I'm going to pay $200 for, you know, a two-person dinner. Like, to me, nah, I don't like that. Another thing is, of course, the weather. Obviously, summertime is freaking beautiful, and I definitely plan on doing a summer in Scandinavia. You know, go to the lakes and see the beautiful nature and so forth. But shit, besides that, you know, reminds me of where I grew up in Minnesota. Just you know, depression weather, and I don't want to deal with that at all. And then lastly, the topics we were discussing beforehand is you just don't necessarily feel alive. At least me personally, when I'm here or when I'm living here, it's like I don't know, I'm searching for adrenaline. I'm searching for something that like slaps me in the face. And that's why I always say, you know, Italy to me is a perfect balance between the two. I spent about 2 years in Italy. It's where you're not gonna get robbed, okay? You're not it's not like dangerous, but it's, you know, a little more, for sure, more dirty. Got the graffiti there, you know, the streets aren't as clean, but there's just something about like life, you know what I mean? Like, it's not as extreme as in Brazil, where you really feel like you're living, because it's dangerous, right? So you're on edge, but the coolest parties, the most lively type people. But the balance in Italy is more like, you get that, not to the extreme, but you're also like, hey, you know, I'm not gonna get shot, I'm not gonna get robbed, you know, it is still safe, right? So yeah, coming with that perfect society, obviously there's cons to everything. There's a reaction, there's an action, and there's a reaction. And in my opinion, from my experience living there, is that as a man, the men have been domesticated. There's no question about that. And look, it's worked, okay? It's a great, beautiful, probably peak type civilization, but it's like, I don't know. I would feel kind of like a lion caged with how I've seen, you know, Scandinavian men act and be. And, you know, not all of them, you know, there's a handful that are good and make things work and whatnot, but I really get to see kind of the negatives of it in football, where obviously football is similar to like a war type environment. A lot of shit's gonna go wrong, a lot of adversity is gonna happen, and how you adapt to it really shows what kind of character you have, what kind of strength you have. Do you want everything just given to you, similar to Scandinavia, where you are given a lot, which I'm not saying is bad, but all of a sudden some little adversity happens and you can't handle it, and all of a sudden you're bitching over what some dude said to you at a dinner table 2 weeks ago, and that's all you can think about. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think people in not as developed societies care so much about those little type things, because, you know, they're more worried about food on the table, they're more worried about safety and security and whatnot. But do I wonder what's going to happen to the Scandinavian society with a bunch of men, in my opinion, that aren't as much leaders or masculine? I do. I really wonder. I mean, we saw what happened, you know, in parts like Sweden, when you know, the refugees came in and said, you know what, fuck you, we're gonna do things our way, you're not gonna do a damn thing about it, because, you know, you're nice people, right? And, you know, this is the Swedish way. And I know in Denmark they had issues too with it. It's just worrisome that what could happen if you know, dudes just bend over and take it. What also really like contradicts my personality, obviously growing up as an American too, is like the confidence. Some may say even ego but that you know, putting your shoulders back and thinking that you can do whatever the fuck you want to do, and you know, take what's yours mentality. And obviously, you know, there's negatives to this, correct? But you know, that American mindset of pull your bootstraps up, you can do anything you want, you can be who you want, you know, don't take shit. You know, to me, that's what like being a man is. You know, obviously if you do it in a negative way, there's issues and it can be very destructive, 100%. But you know, I love being a man. I love doing what I want. I love freedom. I love being delusionally confident, right? And I think in Scandinavia, they hammer that out of you from day one. It's like I've said plenty of times before, they've transcended the individual, they've transcended the family, they've transcended the community, the state, the city. Like, they care about the country and the people as a whole. It is fascinating, right? Like, let's all hold hands, let's all share, you know, we're all in this together, which I said, it's great, right? But, you know, will it last? And also, there's obviously negatives to everything, right? There's no one perfect system. Some prices here. I think 10 Nokia is $1, so this is $3, $5. It's not bad. Cause yeah, I wish we could all be hippies and there'd be peace in this world, and you know, we could all hold hands, but that's just not reality. You know, throughout the history of man, it's been about war, and we're seeing it again with Russia and Ukraine. That was one of the always big things I had with, especially living in Denmark, like, oh, Americans, you're so fucking stupid, and you have to pay for healthcare, and there's shootings everywhere, and oh my God, you have guns. And I'm like, okay, who's protected you since the end of World War II, right? So all the money that you don't spend on your military, because remember in World War II when you just bent over and the Nazis came in there, you didn't even put up a fucking fight. I know there was a little resistance or whatever, and obviously the Russians were more important in that war, but Europe has been basically a client state of the USA because our military protects all of Europe, right? And because of that, you are able to invest way more into your social programs, your education, your healthcare, you know, making sure people have homes. But someone's got to be the bad guy to keep peace, right? And we've seen it throughout all of human history. You know, as much as we want to put our hand up and let's vote and let's all get along, blood has been what has changed history. Blood has what has been kept many people safe. And that's why, you know, when the Euros and the Scandinavians especially, you know, just bash the United States, I'm looking at you like, you know, it's time to be grateful too, okay? Because if it wasn't for us, you know, I think some bad things could happen to you. So there's just a give and take to everything, but you need strength for peace, right? And I think in the Scandinavian culture, you know, they've been in fairy tale land for so long that it's like, no, it can all be like this. Everything can be fine. But then, of course, they started seeing something different when they allowed a lot of people from different cultures, you know, in the Middle East to come here. And, you know, some didn't assimilate. And there's many different reasons why, right? So before you come at me for anything, there's many different reasons why. But cultures are different, right? And when it all comes down to it, you know, we are still fucking, you know, animals. Hopefully we'll transcend that and whatnot, but survival of the fit and war is in our DNA. And unless some alien comes down here, unless we get some neural link from Elon Musk, that doesn't just go away. We're not much different than the Romans were 2,000 years, right? So it's the one, you know, little gripe I have with Scandinavia and, you know, the European societies when they start bashing us, you know, for our guns and for all that kind of shit. Like I said, if we could all live like this in a little utopia and be happy and, you know, do that thing where they go around the pole and they're all dressed up, that'd be great. I would love that. But there's a difference between, you know, delusion and practicalness, right? I think a healthy mix of both is what makes the world go round. This is very Scandinavian. Cozy, what, hygge, the Danish word for just chilling. colors aren't that bright. An old factory, paper factory. Just he was crazy madman.
We have already very strict laws for
Yeah.
those guns. So we probably got it from Helsinki or something like that.
Do you know how old this church is?
I can search it up.
Damn, this is pretty right there, the view in the back. See the red little Norwegian type home? So I guess this is the suicide bridge. New Year's Eve, a lot of Norwegians jump off it.
Yes.
It's that American influence. Nordiga. Hola, Nordiga. I say hello.
Hi.
Hi, from Nordiga. Just a beautiful beach in Norway. This beautiful bridge, the suicide bridge. But check out these views. So I guess mainly this area is full of locals and students from many different villages. They either bus in here or they all, rent an apartment and go to school. It's extremely mellow, like almost too calm and safe, and I'm almost getting antsy being in this environment, but it's nice, It's just a different way of life. These Scandinavians and more specifically Norwegians, it's just different. What I always get hung up on is how, I can go from here and then, take a plane ride and be in a freaking war zone or a favela or, a shithole, basically. It's like how, humans and cultures live. It trips me out. But yeah, in regards to that suicide bridge, so I was with a local, a little tour guide, and basically it is really interesting. I think you get so bored of such a perfect life that you search for the narcotics. There was a big, lot of drugs that moved through here, I was told. Also, every New Year's Eve, they had to put like police barricades around the bridge because people like jump all the time to kill themselves. I don't know, I think it just goes to show that you need a little sadness maybe, or something in your life that makes you appreciate and be grateful for the highs and, a calm, peaceful day. Otherwise you take it for granted and you start doing some crazy shit to feel something, right? That's kind of the message I got from the local when we talked about the different issues the Norwegians face, more specifically the ones that are out of Oslo, like more the country and the smaller village types. But 100% I would definitely recommend visiting the city. I think it would be a sweet little weekend relaxation. When it's in the middle of the summer, maybe you could hit the beach. The water, I guess, is like freezing, but if the sun is shining, then it could be a good little dip in the pool. But just the views, it is crazy. I guess a lot more tourists come in the winter, obviously for the world-class skiing and the mountains and so forth. But I think a little summertime getaway, come up to Lillehammer for like a retreat, get away from the world, relaxation, live in a beautiful, perfect place. Look at this. Another interesting fact is the locals, a big thing they do is they like cars, right? So they go drive in the countryside, play tunes, just vibe. A lot of like country type Norwegian music. It was quite interesting. It's like folk country. That's like a big thing to do. And I remember, growing up, not in the country, but you know, we had some roads, and obviously in American culture, you can drive when you're young, and that's kind of the freedom. So I related to that, you know, taking your car and with your friends and going the scenic routes and playing good tunes. I guess that's a huge thing that happens over here with the locals. And as you can see, there's some decent cars. And they're not the little cars. You know, in Europe, you always see those little dorky little cars. These kind of look like normal, some bigger ones. I've seen someone with like some actual horsepower and shit. So it's kind of interesting, the car culture that they have here. And I mean, maybe that's the only thing you can do. Go check out a scenic view. And I think that's a reason too why the Scandinavian countries are so welcoming to foreigners, is because the foreign culture adds spice to their life. Some new excitement, and you know, the food, the way of life, the parties, just a difference, because I don't know how people do it, but just living this simple, perfect life, like I've said you know, a couple times before on this, is it would just get old, right? And you want to feel something different, and maybe that's why. Oh, beautiful view. So yeah, I don't know, I think in my opinion, from what I've seen, what I've done, my experiences, is that as a dude, to feel fulfilled, you need to be conquering, building, you know, succeeding, not just staying still and, you know, soaking up the life. And I always feel it too. When my favorite things to do, you know, I go to the beach with beautiful girls and drink vino, right? And after a while, it's boring. It's like, what am I doing? Like, you don't feel the same love for it after 2 weeks, right? And you're like, I need to do something. I need to go build something. You go build something, like, okay, yeah, I want to go and, you know, live la dolce vita, right? But that's because you earn it, right? And the cliche is, you know, nothing ever feels good unless it's earned. And I think, you know, it's 100% true. So that's how I kind of relate it to, you know, this society. Is when everything is given to you and everything is, you know, perfect and amazing, it's just like, this is boring. You know, I feel like a caged lion. My balls are cut off, and I need to go, you know, out in the wilderness and go chop trees and kill deer or some shit to get a sense of purpose, right? I think that's the main thing, is purpose. A dude, you know, I'm speaking from that perspective because I am one, is he needs purpose to be happy and fulfilled. Can't just be given everything. Well, I learned something interesting too, is I guess the Hells Angels have a presence here with dealing narcotics and weapons. I know there's like a big Hells Angels thing in Oslo, and obviously the Hells Angels started in California, but there's a couple tattoo shops that are like the headquarters, and this is insider knowledge. So who's ever watching this from, you know, Norway, or if the Hells Angels are watching this, sorry, but I guess that's their operation. There's cops that frequently raid it, and this is maybe hearsay, but it's what I heard. So I think that's kind of interesting. The Hells Angels are putting in that work out here. I guess in the winter time, most of the tourism is done by the Germans. Supposedly they come here with old World War II German maps, because during that war, I think Norway was officially neutral, but allowed the Germans to move and transport oil, soldiers, and whatnot through the country. So an interesting thing is that the Germans, they take these old maps of this area, the surrounding parts, and go hiking and exploring with the map. And the Germans built a lot of the railroads in Norway, and their big plan was to do it all the way to the top. And I think obviously the war efforts, they had to put it elsewhere because they needed the people and the supplies and whatnot on different fronts. But the German plan was to make railroads connecting all of Norway, which to me is pretty interesting. It would have been nice if they did too, because I don't think there's as many trains in the north anymore. You need a car. I did feel the Norway expensive-ness at a little local cafe earlier. It was a good cafe. I enjoyed it very much. But I got like two, you know, nice like sandwiches with bread and tomatoes on the sandwich on top, and you know, they heat it up or something, but they're like cafe sandwiches, right? Got two of those, a spritz, Aperol, and thing of water, and it was 40 bucks. I was like, the fuck? I think she overcharged me, but who knows. And so yeah, that is not fun. I mean, that should be at most 10 bucks, but you know, it was a good vibe. I'm gonna take a photo of it and put the photo up when I do this. I got 2 salads, not that big, a little sandwich, a pack of meat, some deodorants, and 2 liters of gas water. I think it was around $26. To me, that's a little, you know, not crazy. I think this Kiwi market is the place to go. It seems relatively decent priced, but this is the tip for them Scandinavian countries. Always go to those little like markets or those chains that have the good prices. You know, get your vino and your beer and go have a date in the park, or you know, have lunch in the park, because this place is, you know, spendy. You go broke real quick living in Scandinavia. Going back on my points about Scandinavia and how perfect it is. See, like in this type of environment, I don't feel like reaching for the stars, right? I don't have that sink or swim, bootstrap type mentality, and obviously with that mentality comes the innovation. It comes the reason that they had this society in the first place. For all this shit, you know, the Vikings went through, their ancestors, the Kingdom of Denmark, you know, all that kind of stuff led to what they had now. So there's obviously a need for that in the world. You know, you look at America, the land of extremes, and that innovation has driven the whole world, you know, with the technology, the Hollywood, the music, you know, all those different kind of things that have led to a more prosperous world, and things have gotten better, you know. So you need both for sure. You can't have one. You can't have the Brazilian favela, and you can't have a perfect Scandinavian culture. I think if there's no flight or flight in your world, in your life, there's no innovation. So, you know, and innovation is what makes everything more prosperous, right? I don't know, food for thought. It's the original Olympic flag from the 1954 games. These are the Olympic torches, and then here's the lillehammer one. It's supposed to represent how man took control of fire by pulling a branch out of a bonfire. It's pretty cool, but it looks totally different than the rest of the torches. So this is a recreation of a Viking house, but listen carefully, it's creepy. I feel like one of those things is gonna come alive and take me. It's scary. And check this out, this is like where the Vikings, where they traveled, the path they took. Came down here. It's modern day Latvia, Denmark, England. And then you got the little Leif Erikson or whoever that guy was that came over to the New World. Iceland. Look at that. They went up to the Black Sea, Caspian Sea. It's crazy. North Africa. I really gotta watch that TV show, Vikings, now. I'm fascinated with the Vikings currently. How rugged this land is, and just imagine seeing like hundreds of those little ships coming down these rivers. Crazy. God damn, they make this thing creepy. We got the national outfit here.
Yep, this is our national costume. This is from this area, so it's called Rondastakk from Gudbrandsdalen, the valley where we are now. And today I'm wearing a blue shirt and a blue apron, which is for work days. And then on Sundays we have to wear a white shirt and then a black apron. It's more nice.
And this is like passed down from centuries, right? Like how old is this outfit?
So they used it in the 1800s as working clothes, really.
Okay.
And then it has changed to become our national.
Did they not know how to match colors? Because it's all over the place, the pen.
I don't think they care that much, really. And also, this is wool, so this we made ourselves. My shirt and the apron is cotton, and we didn't get cotton until late 1800s.
Cool, thank you. You look great.
Thanks.
What's trippy to me is that some of these buildings are only like 200 years old. That church, like the foundation was about close to 1,000, not even. And they lived like this. Compare that to like the Romans and other civilizations. I mean, the Vikings didn't seem like they were that advanced at all. Maybe because they got that oil money. That's why their civilization is so good now. I mean, these are like mud fucking huts. Ain't that impressive? You know, I got some Viking blood down the line, Norwegian ancestry, but damn, I can see why the Romans called them barbaric. You know, obviously they were tough and they pillaged and they didn't play no games, but I mean, if I was a Viking living in this and I went down to Rome and saw what they've been living like for 1,000, almost 2,000 years beforehand, I'd be like, oh my God. It really puts into perspective just how advanced and awesome and great the Romans were. Yeah, see, this was built in the 17th century. It was moved and redecorated in 1785. Just a winter home. I'm just reminded because in the history of Norway, the little exhibit I went to, they were talking about the Germans when they took over. And, you know, everyone knows about the master race and, you know, the Nordic blood, and obviously there's more speculation to it about the Aryans and who they really are and what, and a lot of it's been debunked, etc., etc. But, you know, from my understanding, Hitler was always talking about the blonde hair, blue eyes, and, you know, the Scandinavians and Norwegians are like the Nordics, you know, it's like a big thing, but the Nordics weren't living good. Like, you know, the Mediterranean cities or the Mesopotamian civilizations, like the ancient Greeks. I mean, this is like not great compared to what they had, you know, thousands of years beforehand. You know, and obviously those civilizations I was referring to beforehand, they had to deal with a lot more war and people around them, and obviously they had better weather, you know, for food, and they're not living in some, you know, tundra like the Nordic people. But I think the Nordics were so far away that they never really dealt with other people, you know, having to invade them. You know, obviously they had in tribal fighting and whatnot, but I think that warrior mentality and being around all those other civilizations, you know, pushed other ones to become so much greater. And, you know, I think the Nordics were like, hey, we got our little wood huts and we fish and we eat and this is our life. There's no conquering until the Vikings like set sail and said, let's go. And then obviously they pillaged and conquered their way through, you know, most of Europe and started to become the top dogs. Check out the wall decorations. You see that? I think that's pretty interesting. Little doors. Oh. This don't look fun to live in, especially with the weather here. It would be definitely a hard life, I think. I understand why they wanted to find different lands, you know, get on their boats and get the hell out of here, because this is not the most exciting place. And I bet they heard about like the people from the south and their civilization and how great it was. Well, obviously they did, because Christianity came up through here, and the Romans were in North Germany, so they were trading with each other and doing all that. So I bet they're hearing about the grand city of Rome and the eternal city, and they're like, damn, I need to get the hell out of here and go down there, even if I gotta take it from them. And going back to my previous parts too, about kind of where Scandinavia is at now, and what I've noticed with the people is, back then I think those civilizations down in the south, they were living life on somewhat easy mode compared to here, and people started doing some debauchery and had so much money and throwing things around, and maybe they were comfortable. And the Vikings, man, they weren't living comfortable, and I think that's probably what created such strong men, the Vikings. And they went down there and they said, bend over, daddy's in town, right? So it's kind of interesting, like the environment, and creating that kind of person that goes down there and says, no, it's mine now. And I bring that back to the refugee, the Muslim thing that was happening in Scandinavia, that's been happening, is that those dudes came from a shitty situation with all the wars and whatnot, and they come here and they in a certain way are like, I'm gonna take what's mine and you're gonna listen to me, right? So it kind of goes back to that tough times make strong men makes good times make weak men make shitty times, that cliche quote. But I think it kind of rings true for some civilizations. But it's a very neat experience, going to the areas where your ancestors are from. I think it puts a lot of things in perspective. I highly recommend everyone else, look up your ancestry, go check it out. Obviously, I'm doing the American thing where, my great-great-grandpa, they were Norwegian, but it's still, you could feel, it's in your blood, that these type of areas in this environment, and to see it firsthand, I think it's just, it's really neat, and that everyone should do it to get a better appreciation of who they are, where they're from, all the people that sacrificed to get you where you are now, and I think it's really cool. Yeah, and so obviously this is like a farmyard too. This is not like a city, but it's a pretty big one. It's 27 buildings here. And I was reading too, in the history of Norway, the museum, that I think Bergen was the most populated city in the early 1800s or late 1700s. There was like 2,000 people, right? I think Oslo, at the end of the 1800s, had only 400,000 people, maybe less than that. So, maybe there's a couple bigger, more developed cities in Norway, but I think most of Norway was like these little farm, villages type places, comparable to the Roman Empire, where you had, hundreds and hundreds of cities all throughout Europe and the Mediterranean, and into Asia and North Africa, that were monstrous compared to what's going on here. And obviously they had little farm villages like this, but just puts things into perspective, kind of how advanced the Romans were compared to a lot of other places. So you're probably thinking, oh, what the hell do you know about history and why are you interested in it? I'll tell you why. I started playing Total War, a little strategy game on the computer when I was in college during class, because I was bored. And through that game, I became very, very interested in the Romans and all that type of history. And I was lucky to live in Italy for 2 years and visited 50 plus cities. And I dived into all the Roman stuff and the medieval ages and the Renaissance period, but more so, the Romans, the Republic and the Empire just fascinates me. So I'm an armchair historian. I started watching a bunch of videos and doing my own research, and obviously I don't know as much as people who actually study it for real and take the time, but I think I have a good picture, an idea of it, because I've read about it, but I've actually seen it. I think a lot of those historians and people that talk about history, they never seen it in person. I think it's a little different when you get to live it and walk it and feel it. And again, I could be wrong with a lot of different facts, but I think I have a unique perspective on it from what I've learned, where I'm from, what I've seen. So that house was built in 1590. Get an idea here. Got the grass roof. It's kind of cool actually. Nice to lay down there a summer day. This is from 1590. What the rural people of Norway were living in. You got a little kitchen over there, I guess. Huh. Little patio. And these ones, I think, were like 1700. I think that one was actually 1800. So yeah, that one's kind of funky, huh? Look at it, it's on like stilts, like at home in Florida. That's for sure the coolest thing about this place. The old church, the base of it was built in 1200. And like the add-ons, because it looks like a cross, was later on after the Protestant Reformation. That's pretty cool. Doesn't that look eerie? It's scary. It looks like some horror film, pagan mythology. You go in there and some demon or something takes you, but no, it was Christian. Beautiful little pond. Yes, I don't know. I think my final thoughts are, I remember being in, ancient city of Pompeii. It's totally preserved, right? Because after the volcano and the ashes and whatnot, you can basically see the whole city, and it blew my mind. It really did. And I come and I look at this and I think these people were living 1500 to almost 2000 years after that, and they're living like this, and Pompeii was living like that. It's just, it doesn't compute in my brain of like humans and civilization, how some develop crazy and some don't, and it's just wicked. It really trips me out. I'll tell you some closing thoughts though. It is really admirable how the Norwegians conquered this tundra. Obviously right now it's beautiful, it's in the summer, but for the most part this place is, inhospitable. And it just goes to show, like, those Indonesian people and far of Canada living in igloos, is how amazing it is for humans to like conquer their surroundings and survive and thrive. And really neat experience seeing that old Viking village, Nordic village in Lillehammer. I liked it a lot. But shit, I would have been on that first Viking ship out of here to go conquer England, but I would have landed in Sicily, when they took over Palermo and the island. I would have been one of those Vikings, the Mediterranean. That's where my Viking blood belongs. Another interesting thought is, me observing how those people lived back then and thinking, damn, that would have been a shitty life. Obviously they didn't know much different, but now I think about myself and people, in 1,000 years from now being like, damn, that dude lived a shitty life. So that's really interesting. Humans and our experiences, and I don't know. But it's wild, if you think about it, out of all those old Viking kings, I myself, a normal person, well, obviously I was born in America, which helped out a lot, has seen more. I've ate way more foods than them. All the amount of experiences I've had has probably been tenfold compared to any of those old Viking kings. And to put that in perspective, it just blows your mind.